One thing I think would be useful is for people to understand logic better. It just seems like people just don't get it. And I've been thinking, how could I do anything about that? Yes, I'm going to claim in this that I understand logic and metalogic, the ideas of logic. And let me try to bring you to the same understanding, okay? First of all, logic, a study of logic is a study of inferences, right? Of how you can infer one set of statements from another. Okay, in formal logic, you have to understand philosophers have mind language. They spend a lot of time going, well, what do we mean when we say this? You know, we use this as if we know what it means. We have faith in these heuristics, but we don't really understand why is it that this means that, and so on. So we study our rules of inference. Now, in formal logic, what can we infer from? Sentences. What kind of sentences? Specific kinds of sentences. You can't infer from queries, imperatives, only declarative sentences that can be said to be true or false. Now, the theory that all statements could be put in this form, that's never been demonstrated. Okay? But more importantly, think about this. Any rules of inference. That means that in a sense, all the illogic, any rule of inference, like if you infer something from someone's skin color, if you think that they have clean fingernails means that they have a clean house, any of those inferences, and they can work, those would all be subject to the study of logic, any rule of inference. And the second thing about logic is, like, I'm claiming to know logic doesn't mean all my conclusions are correct. A logical argument doesn't actually assert conclusions. What it does is it links conditional circumstances to a conclusion. It says if X, Y, and Z, then we could infer A, B, C. Probably be better to go if A, B, C than we do infer X, Y, Z. Whatever. Right? So the only way to get a conclusion is with a logical argument and some principles. Now, how do you justify the principles? Well, if you use a logical argument, you're just going to get back further conditional principles. So there's always some principles that you're taking as evident, whether it's self-evident, whether you think you have data to prove it, whatever argument you might want to provide, if pressed, at the time of that argument, you're taking those as givens. So a logical argument is not necessarily telling you anything. The logical argument is just saying, look, if you check these 20 facts, you can use this logical argument to draw a conclusion from those 20 facts. You still need a way to get to 20 facts, and this is really stymied Western logic and with its head in clouds attitude. But how do we get those facts? Seeing is believing. There's certain experiences, sense experiences, double-checked, experimental, the results of experiments where we could check, double-check, be very careful, triangulate, use good measuring devices. That's how you get facts. That plus a logical argument could lead you to predict a conclusion. Okay? And I think it's really important to get this stuff right. What is a logic? A logic is a subset of all the total potential and actual rules of inference that is in itself a system. Like first-order logic, it's a logic. It's a set of rules of inference. What situation is it good at? Is it applicable to? Well, first-order logic's pretty decent with dealing with declarative statements, producing declarative statements, given declarative statements, right? But other logics are good at other things. There's logics that deal better with probabilistic or modal, like modal logic. Second-order logic allows you to variabilize, but it's been shown that it's you can't that there's statements you can't prove that are true, but that you can't prove true, which seems like a big problem to people. I don't think when you run into a mess in a certain subset of laws of inference that's the end of the road. I mean, we use these things. I mean, it's in the field. They're being used, so they're worth studying why we use them. If they don't break down analytically, it might be that we require certain rules of inference that don't break down analytically, that is phenomenologically formed over evolution. We just start to know that this situation tends to lead to that situation. What's the link? We don't know, except for the one becomes other. And the beauty of looking at it this way is we can discuss rules of inference separate from input facts. Rules of inference allow us to take input facts, which ought to be more directly observable if possible, and produce something else that's directly observable. Okay, then we can use those rules of inference to predict and, post-dict the world. But also, if the prediction comes out false, we can double check the input facts. If those seem true, then there's a problem in the inference, and we could judge the inference, and that's what we study in logic, is the rules of inference. We didn't just define the rules of inference. There isn't just one set of rules of inference. There's all these ones, crappy ones, good ones, all with their own limitations and benefits, and we're studying them. They're not a given. They're something we study, that we're trying to discover patterns about, a meta-logic. How can we characterize inference rules? Yeah, some are analytical, some are heuristical. There's a lot of categorization possible. And that's what we're doing. We're on top of logic. Okay? You don't just say, oh, I've decided to be a logical person, and then you are, because there is no single logic. To be a logical person is to be a student of the rules of inference in general. And yeah, this allows you to invent concepts like coherency and validity, where you can judge rules of inference based on, do they generate contradiction? Can you do proofs, or do things turn out the same way every time, and so on and so forth. Cheers.